adapted from 1001 Nights. Sindbad's Sixth Voyage, The Lost Kingdom and the Sea of Peril. Sindbad sat in the courtyard of his grand home in Baghdad, the sunlight filtering through the lush leaves of the garden's trees. Despite the splendor surrounding him, fine silks, rich tapestries, and the gentle murmur of a fountain, a sense of emptiness lingered in his heart. He was wealthier than he had ever been, each previous voyage having brought him treasures that most could only dream of. Yet, Sindbad could not shake the feeling that something was missing. The people of Baghdad knew him as a great adventurer, a man of boundless courage who faced danger without fear. His name was spoken with admiration, and his stories had become legendary. But for Sindbad himself, each of these tales, each perilous journey across foreign seas, each encounter with monsters and mysteries, felt increasingly hollow. He could not deny the thrill of adventure, but he now wondered about the purpose behind it all. Sitting amidst the opulence of his home, Sindbad allowed his mind to wander, reflecting on the past voyages that had brought him to this moment. The more he thought, the more the golden trappings around him began to seem like mere trinkets, unable to fill the growing void within. He remembered the battles for survival, the moments when he clung to life by the thinnest thread. Those moments had been full of meaning, even if they had been terrifying. But now, in the safety of his home, he found himself questioning the value of the wealth he had amassed. What had all the gold and jewels given him? What lasting satisfaction had he gained? As Sindbad pondered, he found his thoughts growing darker, drifting into unfamiliar territories of doubt. Was he destined to spend his life chasing the unknown, only to return to an empty house, weighed down by treasures that brought no joy? The people who cheered his name did not know the fear that gripped him in the quiet moments, the fear that his life was slipping by, filled with daring exploits but lacking true purpose. The adventures, once exhilarating, now seemed like mere distractions from a deeper yearning he could not name. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sindbad wandered down to the harbor, drawn by the salty breeze and the rhythmic sound of waves lapping against the docks. The sea had always called to him, its vastness a promise of freedom, mystery, and escape. He stood by the water's edge, watching the last glimmers of sunlight dance on the ripples, and felt the familiar pull within him. But this time, it was not the call of adventure, for riches or glory. It was the call of something deeper, a longing to find answers. As he watched the waves, Sindbad realized what he desired most was not more wealth or another legendary story to tell. It was a sense of peace, a deeper connection to the world and to himself. He wanted to understand his place in the grand, mysterious tapestry of life. The sea, vast and unknowable, seemed to hold the answers he sought, and for the first time, Sindbad felt that perhaps the journey ahead might bring him something more valuable than any treasure chest. The next morning, Sindbad made his decision. He would set sail once more, but this time his motivation was different. He was not seeking riches or renown, but something more elusive, a sense of fulfillment, an understanding of the world that could not be bought with gold. As he stood on the deck of a new ship, the sails billowing above him, and the sea stretching out to the horizon, Sindbad felt a quiet resolve settle within him. This voyage would be unlike any other. He was not running towards adventure or away from his doubts. He was seeking a deeper truth, and perhaps, just perhaps, he would find it beyond the horizon. The gentle rocking of the ship, the salty spray of the sea, and the cries of the gulls filled Sindbad with a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. He closed his eyes, breathed in the sea air, and allowed himself a small smile. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with an open heart, ready to learn, ready to change. The journey had begun, not just across the sea, but within himself. The sea stretched out endlessly before Sindbad, a shimmering expanse of blue that seemed both welcoming and indifferent. As the ship sailed smoothly over the calm waters, Sindbad stood at the bow, taking in the vastness around him. The gentle breeze carried the scent of salt, and the sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the waves. It was moments like this that reminded Sindbad of the beauty of the world, an untouched, pristine beauty that could never be replicated by the riches he had gathered. The ocean was serene, almost meditative, and Sindbad found solace in the rhythmic rise and fall of the ship as it cut through the water. The crew moved about with practiced ease, their voices mingling with the cries of seabirds that circled above. Yet, beneath this tranquility, Sindbad could not ignore the underlying tension. The sea, he knew, could be unpredictable. Its mood could change in an instant, transforming from a calm companion into a fearsome adversary. As he watched the horizon, Sindbad pondered the dual nature of the ocean, how it could be both nurturing and destructive. The thought reminded him of life itself, with its moments of peace and chaos, joy and sorrow. Was he truly in control of his fate, or was he merely at the mercy of forces far greater than himself? The sky began to darken as evening approached, and a sense of unease settled over the crew. The wind picked up, and the once gentle waves grew choppier, their peaks frothing with white foam. Sindbad stood firm, his eyes scanning the horizon as dark clouds gathered, blotting out the sun. The first rumble of thunder echoed across the water, and the crew hurried to secure the sails, their movements quick and efficient. Without warning, the storm descended upon them. The sky turned an ominous shade of black, and the sea roared to life, waves crashing against the ship with relentless fury. The wind howled, tearing at the sails and threatening to rip them apart. Rain lashed down in sheets, blurring Sindbad's vision as he clung to the railing, his knuckles white with the effort. The once calm sea had become a raging tempest, a force of nature that seemed determined to swallow them whole. Sindbad's heart pounded as he fought to keep his balance, the ship lurching beneath him. In that moment, he felt the true power of the sea, a power that could not be tamed or controlled. He realized how small he was, how insignificant his wealth and past triumphs were when confronted with the raw, untamed might of nature. The storm raged on, and Sindbad found himself thrown overboard, the icy water closing in around him. He struggled to keep his head above the waves, his fingers grasping at a piece of debris from the shattered ship. The sea tossed him about like a toy, and Sindbad felt a surge of fear unlike any he had known before. He was at the mercy of the elements, his fate uncertain, his life hanging by a thread. But even in the midst of the chaos, Sindbad found a strange beauty in the storm. The flashes of lightning illuminated the dark sky, casting brief, eerie glows over the churning waters. The power of the storm was awe-inspiring, a reminder of the majesty and unpredictability of the natural world. After what felt like an eternity, the storm began to subside. The wind died down, the waves grew calmer, and the rain lessened to a steady drizzle. Exhausted and battered, Sindbad clung to the piece of debris, his body aching and his mind weary. He had survived, but he knew that the journey was far from over. The sea had tested him, shown him its power, and reminded him of the fragility of life. As the first light of dawn broke on the horizon, Sindbad took a deep breath, his heart filled with a newfound respect for the sea and the lessons it had to offer. The ocean, with all its beauty and danger, was both a teacher and a force beyond comprehension. Sindbad realized that his journey was not just about finding answers, but about understanding his place in the world. A world that was vast, unpredictable, and filled with both peril and wonder. Sindbad drifted in and out of consciousness as he clung to the piece of debris, the salty water stinging his eyes, and the sun beating down on him relentlessly. Days passed in a blur of exhaustion and thirst, the horizon remaining empty and indifferent. Just as Sindbad felt his strength waning, he glimpsed something in the distance, a dark silhouette against the bright sky. Mustering the last of his energy, he paddled towards it, hope flickering within him. The shape gradually took form, revealing itself to be a lush, verdant island, untouched by civilization. The sound of waves crashing against its shore filled Sindbad's ears, and he finally felt solid ground beneath his feet as he collapsed onto the sand, too weak to do anything but breathe. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds greeted him, a stark contrast to the chaos of the storm. Sindbad awoke to find himself in the care of the island's inhabitants, a group of gentle, kind people who spoke a language he could barely understand, yet whose actions conveyed their compassion clearly. They brought him water, tended to his wounds, and provided him with food. As he recovered, Sindbad began to explore the island, marveling at its beauty. Ancient stone structures stood amidst overgrown gardens, their carvings hinting at a forgotten past. Streams wove their way through the landscape, and the air was filled with the scent of wildflowers. The island, he soon learned, was home to a lost kingdom, a once great civilization that had chosen to remain hidden from the outside world, living in harmony with nature and valuing wisdom over material wealth. The people here were content, their lives simple, yet rich with meaning. They worked together, shared what they had, and found joy in the small moments of life. Sindbad was brought before the king, a wise and dignified figure who welcomed him warmly. The king spoke of the values that guided their lives: simplicity, harmony with nature, and the pursuit of wisdom. Unlike the rulers Sindbad had encountered on previous voyages, this king had no desire for riches or power. Instead, he sought to maintain the balance of their secluded world, ensuring that his people lived fulfilling lives, free from the greed and ambition that had brought ruin to so many other lands. The king offered Sindbad a place in the court, and Sindbad, weary of his past pursuits. He became a trusted advisor, using the knowledge he had gained from his travels to help the people of the kingdom. For the first time, Sindbad felt a sense of purpose that went beyond his own desires. He spent his days learning from the king, tending to the needs of the people, and finding contentment in the rhythm of daily life. He realized that true wealth was not found in gold or jewels, but in the connections he formed and the peace he found within himself. He reflected on the choices he had made, the paths he had taken, and the emptiness that had driven him to seek adventure after adventure. Here, in the quiet of the island, he began to understand that the fulfillment he sought could not be found in the pursuit of more. It could only be found in the acceptance of what was, in the beauty of the present moment. Sindbad's days were filled with simple pleasures, walking through the gardens, listening to the laughter of children, and watching the sun set over the ocean. He felt a deep connection to the island, to its people, and to the natural world around him. As time passed, Sindbad found himself at peace in the lost kingdom. He no longer felt the restless urge to set sail, to chase after the unknown. Instead, he found joy in the present, in the simple act of being. He helped the people of the kingdom with their daily tasks, shared stories of his past adventures, and learned from their wisdom. He realized that his greatest journey was not across distant seas, but within himself, towards understanding, acceptance, and contentment. The kingdom, with its emphasis on simplicity, wisdom, and harmony, had given Sindbad something he had sought for so long, a sense of belonging, of purpose, and of peace. And in return, Sindbad gave the kingdom his loyalty, his service, and his heart. Despite the peace Sindbad had found in the lost kingdom, a longing began to stir within him once more. It was not the restless urge for adventure that had driven him in the past, but rather a quiet, persistent feeling that his journey was not yet complete. He had learned so much during his time in the kingdom, about simplicity, about contentment, about living in harmony with nature. But a part of him knew that he could not stay forever. He had a life in Baghdad, people who wondered about his fate, and a responsibility to share the wisdom he had gained. Sindbad often found himself walking along the island shores, staring out at the endless ocean. The waves lapped gently at his feet, and he listened to the rhythm of the sea, feeling both a sense of calm and a pull towards the unknown. The king, noticing Sindbad's growing restlessness, approached him one evening as they stood by the water's edge. "You have given much to our kingdom, Sindbad," the king said, his voice filled with warmth, "and it seems the sea calls to you once more. I can see it in your eyes, the longing to return, to continue your journey." Sindbad nodded, his heart heavy with the thought of leaving. "I have found peace here, something I never thought I would find," he replied. "But I know I must go back. There are people waiting for me, and I feel a duty to share what I have learned." The king smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "The sea has always been your true home, Sindbad, and though we will miss you, we know that your journey does not end here. You have a gift for bringing the wisdom of far-off lands to others, and that is a rare and precious thing." Before Sindbad departed, the king offered him a gift, a ship laden with supplies and treasures, a gesture of gratitude from the people of the lost kingdom. But more than the material wealth, the king gave Sindbad his blessing and a reminder of the true treasures he had found: wisdom, peace, and the joy of living simply. Take these treasures, Sindbad, but remember that the greatest riches are those within you, the king said, his words resonating deeply with Sindbad. Sindbad set sail once more, the sails catching the wind as the island slowly faded into the distance. As he stood on the deck, watching the waves roll beneath him, Sindbad felt a mix of emotions: sadness at leaving behind a place that had given him so much, but also a sense of hope and purpose. He was returning to Baghdad, not as the same man who had left, but as someone who had found a deeper understanding of himself and the world. The journey back was calm, the sea a gentle companion rather than a fearsome adversary. Sindbad spent his days reflecting on all he had experienced: the trials, the moments of beauty, the lessons learned in both peril and peace. He knew that his return to Baghdad would be different this time. As Baghdad came into view on the horizon, Sindbad felt a sense of calm settle over him. The city, bustling and vibrant, awaited his return, but Sindbad knew that the greatest journey was still within him, a journey towards peace, understanding, and the quiet beauty of life. He stepped off the ship with a heart full of gratitude, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Sindbad's return to Baghdad was met with great fanfare. The people, hearing of his arrival, gathered at the harbor to welcome him back. Cheers filled the air, and the crowd surged forward to catch a glimpse of the legendary sailor. Yet, as Sindbad looked out at the familiar faces, he felt a calm detachment. The cheers, the admiration, all the things that once fed his pride, now seemed distant, almost unreal. He smiled warmly, waving to the people, but his heart no longer sought their adulation. He walked through the bustling streets of Baghdad, his senses filled with the sights and sounds of the city. Merchants called out their wares, children played in the alleyways, and the scent of spices and freshly baked bread filled the air. Sindbad felt a sense of belonging, but it was different now. He no longer felt the need to prove himself or seek validation from others. Instead, he felt content just to be part of the world, to live simply and share what he had learned. Back in his home, Sindbad found himself surrounded by the treasures he had amassed from his previous voyages. Gold, jewels, rare artifacts, each piece a reminder of the adventures he had undertaken. But as he looked at them now, they seemed to lose their luster. What value did they hold compared to the wisdom he had gained, the peace he had found within himself? Sindbad decided to give much of his wealth away, distributing it to those in need, helping the poor and the destitute. The joy he saw in their eyes brought him a fulfillment far greater than any treasure ever could. Sindbad spent his days in quiet reflection, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. He would often sit in his garden, listening to the birds singing in the trees, watching the flowers bloom, and feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He found solace in the natural world, in the beauty of each passing moment. He also shared his stories, not as grand tales of heroism, but as lessons learned from the trials he had faced. He spoke of the power of nature, the fragility of human life, and the importance of humility. He told of the lost kingdom, of the people who had shown him that true wealth lay not in material riches, but in the connections we form and the peace we find within ourselves. The people of Baghdad listened, captivated not by the adventures themselves, but by the wisdom that Sindbad imparted. Dostoevsky's influence was evident in Sindbad's reflections on fate, destiny, and the human. He also shared his stories, not as grand tales of heroism, but as lessons learned from the trials he had faced. He spoke of the power of nature, the fragility of human life, and the importance of humility. He told of the lost kingdom, of the people who had shown him that true wealth lay not in material riches, but in the connections we form and the peace we find within ourselves. The people of Baghdad listened, captivated not by the adventures themselves, but by the wisdom that Sindbad imparted. Dostoevsky's influence was evident in Sindbad's reflections on fate, destiny, and the human. Sindbad spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of his experiences, yet filled with warmth and hope. The greatest journey, he said, is not across distant seas or through unknown lands. It is the journey within, the journey to understand oneself, to find peace and purpose in the life we are given. True wealth is not measured in gold or jewels, but in the love we share, the kindness we show, and the peace we carry within our hearts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sindbad fell silent, his heart filled with gratitude. He had traveled far and faced many challenges, but it was here, in the quiet of his garden, surrounded by those who cared for him, that he had found what he had been searching for all along: wisdom, peace, and the simple beauty of life. And so, Sindbad lived the rest of his days in Baghdad, not as a restless adventurer, but as a man who had found his place in the world. He continued to share his stories, to help those in need, and to find joy in the ordinary moments of life. His journeys had taken him across the seas, to distant lands and forgotten kingdoms. But the greatest journey of all had led him back to himself, to the wisdom and peace that lay within. As you close your eyes, let the echoes of this story guide you to peace. Drift gently into sleep, knowing you are part of a world where love and wisdom shine bright. May your dreams be calm, comforting, and filled with wonder.